Good morning, everyone.
Good
Uh,
morning.
Thank you for joining us bright and early for the webinar on Beyond COVID-19, the new normal for business. My name is Aprajita Amar. I'm an advocate and founder of Sexual Harassment Law Compliance Advisory, a POSH compliance advisory. We help organizations in creating safe and POSH compliant workplaces. We work very closely with human capital management on several human resource domain areas. I would first like to thank the panelists and the attendees for joining us today to share their valuable insights. Let's dive right into our panel today, consisting of Dr. Ankita Singh, the Vice President and Global Head of HR at Signex Datamatics. She has over 19 years of progressive experience in managing and leading various aspects of human resource, spanning across high-paced domains of ITES. Dr. Murthy K. Uppaluri, he is the former CEO and MD of Radspan, a global business leader, an angel investor, and an advisor to early startups. With vast domestic and international experience across diverse sectors like IT, manufacturing, and professional services, he is credited with evolving business strategies, building brands, growing market share, improving operational excellence, driving innovation, and fostering a people centric culture. Mr. Rohit Thakur, he is the Chief Human Resource Officer at Paytm with over 25 years of industry experience under his belt. Rohit has also spent 11 years at GE in various HR leadership roles across multiple businesses like energy, capital, engineering, corporate, and aviation, where he was proud to be one of the employees recognized globally as a growth leader in inclusiveness. And Mr. Dakshdeep Singh, who is an associate vice president at PeopleStrong. He has over 11 years of rich experience in helping enterprises to adapt and adopt digital HR solutions to enhance employee experience. An HR tech evangelist and an experienced solution architect, he leads customer success at PeopleStrong. Thank you so much for joining us today. So, coming to the workshop, COVID 19 has created a new reality for businesses. It has led to a massive paradigm shift, pushing organizations to prepare for the future and to adopt a people first response to the current crisis. Successfully managing social distancing and implementing remote working has become a very important part of managing this crisis with resilience and ensuring long-term business sustenance. In the absence of information, we tend to lead towards the worst case scenarios. So we thought a session like this would help a lot of us achieve clarity on best practices which we know are working. The new normal has had an impact on all of us, and we're very excited to get insights from this panel on what we know as an industry, your personal experiences and inputs, and to give participants some key takeaways and tools maybe which they can adopt and adapt to implement in their new normal. Um, so starting with diving right into it, Dr. Murthy, I would love to understand the COVID-19 pandemic has been a crisis like unlike any we've known of. There are no precedents to go by. In your vast experience across these diverse domains, you've led multiple transformation projects. To start off, could you share some reflections around the ongoing transformations in the world of work? How do you see these transformations of remote workplace, virtual workplaces, forging the way ahead?
I think you asked me about the transformations that are happening as a result of COVID 19 so far, correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
beautiful. I think the transfer, as the cliched statement that comes to my mind is when transformations happen, several people don't notice them, you know, and most people end up noticing after the transformation has happened, and which is not really important. So it is very important for some of us as leaders to lead the transformation and to watch the transformation happen and maneuver it in the right way. So, what are some of the things that we have realized more? Let us start from realizations. I think as a result of COVID 19, several folks have started are forced to work from home. And at one point in time, all of us thought probably work from home is only for convenience, is only for short term, and what have you. But nobody envisioned that this would be for so long. So it is the biggest mindset has been the challenge. The enemy is us in terms of leveraging the technology and working from home. That's a realization. And the second biggest realization, in no order particularly, I'll go quickly on this, is the role that some of the migrant workers or the people, the support staff, both at business and home, that they play, the key role that they play. We have come to a serious realization, about that particular segment and the impact that they can have in bringing the whole world to a halt, literally. And another realization we all have is the wealth. The wealthiest of the companies, if you look at the companies that have the maximum market cap in any country, whatever that is, they could not play an active role in terms of on the ground. All that they could do is donate the money or what have you. So, one quick realization is money is not a solution for many of these problems. Not everything can be bought by money. Then one more thing we all have learned very quickly is it's an equalizer. COVID-19, whether irrespective of your race, religion, caste, creed, age, gender, it can affect anybody. So that's a quick realization. Several things that happen, we think we are safe, but not really. And many businesses have had BCP, business continuity plan, or DRP, if a disaster were to hit them, disaster recovery plan. But none of those could swing into action seamlessly. Still they were learning. So that was a big realization, thinking, validating the executability or pragmatic nature of some of these plans is extremely important. And before I conclude all these realizations and the transformation, is we all realize very quickly that the four P's are extremely important for any business. What are the four P's? People, and I think probably I would repeat the word people, people, people multiple times. But the next is the profits. Nobody needs to come tell the business about the profits. But the two P's that are very important and that have come to the fore when we think about this is thinking and worrying about the planet, being responsible in a sustainable way, and the principles with which we conduct the business. It is not just the values, it is the ethics, and it is the empathetic way in which we connect with the society and we carry the society. So there are several things that have happened. And if I really, and I could just go on, but the transformation that started happening is leveraging technology, accepting technology as an integral part of everything that we do. The online, and of course, Rohit can talk more intelligently than I do about the digital payments and the e-commerce business. Those who were even hesitant, now I think a vast majority of the population transacts online. So I think the entire online business, whether it is for the retail or for any other purpose that you would have, that has become a second to nature for most of us. And businesses that were not there have sprung out. Something like specialty chemicals, retail delivery, touch-free automation. You look at touch-free automation was not there before, whether it is the elevators or whether it is the faucets in the restrooms or the electrical switches. This is a slow transformation that is creeping into our lives. And workspace at home. Everybody has a workspace at home, and everybody is having the tools that will let them connect with the workspace. So that is another transformation that has happened. And online learning. People used to talk about, hey, learning, would it happen only at school, or people would not even give the kids a phone or an iPad or a tablet or what have you. But all of that is a transformation that is without any challenge, without any question, that is creeping in and is becoming a reality for all of us. Online entertainment, self-care industry. We watch fitness videos, we watch any. So I can go on, but I'll stop. So there is a lot of transformation that is happening. Like I said, when a transformation is happening, most people don't realize. After it has happened, people think like, oh, when did this happen? It is like the dawn break. So I think there's a lot of good stuff that is happening out there, and we need to be very cognizant and be an integral part of this change and transformation and lead it from the front. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Murthy, for sharing that. I definitely would like to, understand also in domains of startups. So, Rohit, if you could help us understand specifically, do you think there have been any kind of challenges with regards to these transformations which startups are facing? Because that's something which really came up in the last few years. So, this is kind of put like a question mark on what is the way forward for transformation for startups.
Sure. No, thanks. Thanks so much for having me here, and thanks Murthy for sharing those initial thoughts. I think this is my first experience in startups. I mean, I'm really close working with Paytm for the last 9 months, so I'm understanding how startups work. My thoughts are the advantage of a startup is the agility, the nimbleness, the innovativeness, and the element of the kind of disruption that they bring in. So in my mind, startups, have had a very strong agile mindset to managing this unforeseen circumstances. I mean, I don't think anybody could have imagined we'd be going through what we are going through right now. But then startups have reacted and acted very, very well. Some of the things that I see as challenges, for startups, one is of course how do we reimagine our business model for maximizing revenue growth? What the plans, the kind of trajectory, that startups may have had, before March, might be very, very different from what they've had to face over the last 6 months. So, really, in some ways, reinventing, reimagining, coming up with new models of kind of how to actually work. For example, training. I mean, I'm working with some training startups who are completely face to face, very, very I would say conference oriented. Face to face, where people come in over there, and how smoothly and how fast they've looked at technology platforms, and they're doing conferences like the way you're doing right now, short, sweet, and very, very crisp, and still getting teams to come and kind of watch them. The second challenge has been the optimum cost structure. I mean, what is the right cost structure? I don't believe, and I don't think, I hope, many of us don't, that, this is not there to stay. I mean, maybe the ways we work may change, some things that have taught us right now, we keep learning together, but I'm sure good times and very, very positive times will come very, very fast. And there are opportunities, in what we're going through now as well. So what is the optimum cost structure as we look at a refurbished business model is a second challenge that startups have been going through, to see which people can we move from where to where, what costs, like say office costs or travel costs or some other costs that they kind of just stop. The third is productivity. They're getting the maximum from what they have, is a third challenge. And I think the fourth one is engaging and keeping talent motivated during these times. I mean, from an HR perspective, again, if you look at HR in startups again, I think some of the, and since Murthy gave his 4 Ps, I'll try to give my 4 Ps from an HR perspective. I would say people, exactly like what Dr. Murthy said, people, process, productivity, and P&L partnership. I think these 4 Ps from an HR perspective, how the HR teams have tried to come together and focused on all these Ps have been, again, very, very important for startups and organizations to kind of go through what they're going through and come up with an alternative strategy. So I'll pause there.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it really resonates, because I think there is a huge requirement and people have tried to shift virtually. And while that's been a challenge and that's kind of a transformation which is in the process, that actually brings me to my next question around with it. Dr. Ankita, every industry is experiencing its first, but somewhere the IT sector is playing a huge role in being able to facilitate everything. So how do you see the COVID-19 crisis particularly impacting the IT services?
Thank you, Prajita.
I Dr. Ankita, you're on mute. Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
So, IT, I would say good news is there is no drastic dip. The COVID-19 definitely has resulted in slowdown in the overall economy, and we have witnessed that. We have seen that in the last few months. The decline in IT, the marginal decline, I think is very much justifiable considering the US and Europe, which together accounts for more than two-thirds of India's IT exports. And they initially were the worst affected geographies, and even now probably everybody is equally impacted. So if we consider the fear of uncertain economic situation and recession when we talk about IT sector, be it new contracts or contract renewals, both majorly got impacted. But as Murthy and Rohit mentioned, IT probably was one of the first sectors which took care of those 4 Ps cumulatively. I think now they become 6, and they were able to survive, and that's the reason the marginal impact remained at the same level. So when we talk about project-oriented services such as consulting or custom application development or system integration, definitely there was a dip. There was a significant dip which impacted the entire sector. But if at all we talk about managed services such as application management or hosting services or IT outsourcing, those were still well managed throughout this tenure. So I would say it was a mix, but considering other sectors, IT was still in a much better phase, where even now, if you see the percentage dip from 8, which was expected, it has dipped down to 6.5, but not as other sector, which has gone down to 3 or 4. So yes, I would say there is an impact, but with the progressive movement and strategic planning, I think IT has comparatively managed to survive the situation little well than other sectors.
Thank you, Dr. Ankita, for sharing that insight. So I would, Dakshdeep, I would, love to understand over here with virtual workplaces becoming the new normal, the new norm. Are there also additional adaptations, shifts, which we are seeing in terms of coming in from HR and business leaders on the technology front, which you could help us shed some light on?
Sure. Yep. Thanks, Aprajita. So I think there are key 4 or 5 shifts that I can talk about here. One, for example, for us, the COVID has been as similar to a tsunami that's hitting us, right? 5 shifts or 4 shifts that perhaps can impact us. One is the work is moving from instead of a 9 to 5 rather than to a outcome driven work, right? People are looking more to evaluate your work basis the outcomes rather than looking into it what was the quantifiable aspect that we did. Right. I think it has been a lot of time that people have been working on their images, right? The way they have been carried ahead in their in-person meetings, perhaps the way they have carried themselves in offices, and perhaps that's the status that they're taking ahead. But moving ahead, that's one area wherein people have to actually work upon, and perhaps OKRs is one of the frameworks that I feel is something which is coming up. Right, so that's a correct aspect of driving it via the outcomes and an effort. Right, people don't evaluate today the efforts that are actually going behind. They would want to evaluate the outcomes that are being worked upon. Right, so that's one thing. The second thing which I would want to touch base here would be collaboration. Right, perhaps it used to be, again, since we were earlier, we used to talk about industries like typically people who are in sales or people who are in specific sectors are only distributed workforce, right? But now it's about each and every sector in the market out there, right? So you talk about an IT, there is still a 60% or a 70% workforce that is operating from home, right? Or people who are there who are still actually there, they are still distributed across different locations. So I think collaboration is one of the key areas which actually impacts us. I mean, one of the customers that I have been working across over the past 6 8 months, which is one of the largest insurance agents, via a collaborative platform have exchanged approximately 22 lakh SMSs in a single day in that single platform, right? So that's how people are actually moving ahead. People are moving ahead with contextual conversations. People are moving ahead by creating work groups wherein we can have vernacular language support and so on and so forth. Right. The third thing is, I think, democratized learning. That's another thing that has actually picked up over the last 6 8 months. While we have been hearing in the past, right, that organizations generally don't tend to invest too much in learning. But if you check out, as per the World Economic Forum, it's approximately $25,000 that is taken as the learning cost, which is ideally 1/6 of the cost which a new hire takes. Right, so it makes it much more sense to invest in learning, in cross skilling people, and actually reutilizing those people into the different skills and the skills that are coming up in nowadays. Right, and something like you leverage out AI, you integrate with your content partners, the rise of LMS, as Dr. Murthy was even talking about. Right, that's something that is again coming up. So I think, and something that has been surged upon. I was just reading through one of the blogs in LinkedIn. So as per a LinkedIn research, the learning quotient actually increases by almost like a 20 to 25% in case you have a personalized recommendation engine that comes across and shares certain things basis your own skills. I think the last one is, since we have been anyways talking about, but I think the HR has to play the role of an Iron Man. right? And the HR tech plays their Jarvis, right? So obviously the Jarvis can't replace the Iron Man, but then that's how the work gets augmented, right? One of another customers who has been working out with us, and since I've been talking about more from my experience of actually working across with different enterprises and ensuring their digital journey is working across. So one of the largest passenger car exporters and perhaps a large manufacturer in India saves approximately 35% of his productivity time by weaving AI into the HR tech side of it. Right, so these are the four shifts which I feel are impacting today in the work side, and the business leader should actually take care about it.
Thank you, Dakshit, for sharing that. I think one of the major factors which has come in is the people-centric approach for it, the importance of the P and the people of it. So I think a very important, which kind of comes to the forefront is uh, because of remote teams right now. It's not as easy to be leading it. The human and cultural aspect of it has definitely been a challenge. So Rohit, if you could, please help us understand how have you adjusted your leadership approach when you're managing, facilitating, motivating, and engaging your employees while they're working from home? So, if there are any practical tips, insights which we can all learn to adapt from.
Sure, absolutely. So while leadership is one of an important and a very strong tenet in almost every organization. Working remotely and working remotely for such a long time is like building a new muscle, within our team. So a few things we've been doing, and I'm sure the others can share their thoughts as well. Every Friday, since the beginning of the lockdown, everybody in our leadership team participates in a virtual leadership conversation where the senior 200 leaders around the world are informed about the latest developments happening in the company, in the country, and globally. The leadership also listens to their problems and issues employees may be facing and bounces off thoughts to kind of solve them. This actually has become a highlight of the week for colleagues who look forward to interacting with the CEO as well as the other leaders and really discuss the successes, ongoing projects, and goals. Also, is the beginning of this pandemic, we made multiple efforts to ensure that our colleagues are safe and stay mentally fit. During these stressful times. Over the weeks following the lockdown, we've charted out things that we as a company needed to do for the well-being of our colleagues. We are collaborating with experts in different fields of psychology and therapy for different requirements and talking about plans for organizing various talks, webinars, and sessions. Uh, so currently we've got ongoing sessions and webinars with specialists and counselors around work from home related stress. Families who help our colleagues, manage their children better in lockdown. Health experts who talk about ergonomic workspace and even better sitting posture to handle work related stress. We're also organizing yoga sessions every week in the morning. The third part, which is like I was more of a financial part, while several sectors are actually have witnessed layoffs or salary cuts. Our company has taken a conscious effort, to have salary and ESOP increases this year, and not go for layoffs or salary cuts. We wanted to ensure that employees have job and financial security during this time, and this again has gone a long way, in boosting employee models. Some of the things I spoke earlier about: how do we take cost out? How do we optimize our teams? How do we take cost out besides people cost? Or how do we take people cost out in the most in the least hurtful fashion? Having things that we've done. And of course, that aside, like I'm sure in many organizations, senior managers, team leads are always in touch, with their respective teammates and provide them with all possible support to handle the, kind of operations. And of course, the HR team through the week touches base with various teams to hear out their concerns and address any work-related issues that they have. So I think working virtually has been a kind of how do these things become impactful virtually? Is something that has been a secret sauce that we've tried to kind of bring in, because that muscle, has been created. But I think all the other things have been things that have been going on, and I think have been more than double or triple, over this time, just to ensure that we stay connected virtually.
Thank you, Rohit, for sharing that. Those are some great pointers, I think, that you guys are being able to do, and it's great to know about that.
Yeah.
Um,
And also just to add, just to give the context to the group, I mean, our company was amongst I think the fifth or the sixth person in India was unfortunately from our company. I think March 3rd or March 4th, when we started our lockdown. So for us also, it was something that we learned through the process. We learned through the process. I think we got a lot of help from the government. They were also learning at that time. So the government has helped us tremendously, and as we learned through the process, we adapted. And I must say that our leadership, one of course is to work from home, to have some employees work from home sometime, but to have the entire company, work from home virtually effective March 5th, March 6th, was and then do it consistently till now has been something that we've adapted to and learned, and I think it's completely of the leadership and team effort, for us.
So actually, I would like to add another question over here. Because, like you said, it was the first few responses where, maybe you went into lockdown before any other company did. So there was literally no other example to stand by with or any other precedent to go in. So those initial reactions, because there was also such a fear because of it, of the pandemic. So how did your leadership team and how did you guys align and kind of reinstill confidence in your employees also at that point of time? Because I'm sure, was that also something which was something which came up as a challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. The fear was a very important one because all of us were scared, and employees, of course, the employee who was found was in an office, when he kind of went for a test and so on. He'd come back from his honeymoon, and just come back to India, and so people were nervous. So I think safety of the employee, of course, of utmost of the employee who had COVID and of all the others. And in spite of the effect being in one office, in Gurgaon, we shut down all offices across India, every single office. We have about 51 offices. We shut down everything, and sanitize everything. And I think employee safety, just to eliminate the fumigation, the safety of every of the offices or whatever else was priority. And I think that message that went out the same day, as the case happened, was one instance that hey, we are willing to just completely change the way we work until we figure out, what are the next steps or what's the best way to tackle this. And that gives employees, a tremendous amount of confidence. Even in the time when we made, some of our policies or whatever to say that when kind of come in, if people come into office to kind of, to stop all personal or business related trips, stop international travel, equipping the offices with infrared thermometers, masks, hand sanitizers, which are all very, very common now. But at that point in time, we were just learning through all this. So I think the efforts the company was taking from an employee safety perspective, the communication that the company was sending to employees saying that you don't need to come to office, even if you open offices, you don't have to come to office at all. If you're nervous at any stage, was some of the elements that I think really helped initially as we navigated through this.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So, I think communication plays a huge role over there, and I think that's great to know. I would also like to welcome Neha. She's the managing partner of Human Capital Magazine. There were some technical glitches. Welcome, Neha, to the panel.
Thanks.
Neha, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
Now you're on mute.
Okay, that's my system taking me on mute again and again. But I would like to welcome Dr. Murthy, Mr. Rohit, Dr. Ankita, and Mr. Dakshdeep. And Aparajita, thank you so much for moderating the session. Without taking time, I would just want Aparajita to continue with the questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neha. So moving to the next part of the question around with it, Dr. Murthy, what are the factors that you think need to also be kept in mind while balancing the technology tools that we have currently, which we're trying to adapt to the workplaces, so that there is definitely a balance between human interaction and the AI tools that we are using? And what are the factors which companies should keep in mind when they're reworking their workplace culture with these tools?
Yeah. I think it's a new normal, like we have been talking about, right? In this new normal, There are competencies that the leaders are expected to have that will be different from what we used to seek in leaders. Something that is going to be of extremely high importance in this new normal is the ethical behavior of the companies and the ethics, the emphasis on the ethics that the business leaders are going to lay. And as I think Rohit has alluded to, putting the people in the center of the business, the empathetic leadership that is extremely important, understanding what the employees are going through, being compassionate to what they are dealing with, and then being very enterprising and entrepreneurial, experimentative, fail-safe environment that we create, and all of that will become very important as well. And as a virtue of the online way of doing business, now everything is going to be boundaryless in terms of the talent can be working from anywhere, geographically or what have you, and the innovation can come from all walks of life, and the collaboration needs to happen across the globe more than before. So erasing the boundaries is what I think about it as. And uh, much as it has been said, but not very well understood, it is an equal opportunity environment without these boundaries and without these inhibitions and walls. So I think the new normal is what we need to be embracing, and we need to be becoming, bringing these attributes into the business. And as somebody also asked, I'm trying to wean in a response to a question. Somebody asked about a roadmap for new work or what have you. I think the established businesses and the up and coming startup businesses will have to think about reimagining or reinventing and rebuilding their businesses. The 3 R's are going to be extremely important, because the business model that we have had, or the success that a business have had so far, will not be the same success, or they will not continue on the same trajectory in the new normal as well. So they need to be thinking and aligned with the changing demands in the marketplace. And as the supply chains are going to be disrupted and rebuilt, we as businesses need to align and adapt to these changes that are happening in a very fast and disruptive way in the market. If the businesses are not going to align and lead this change and transformation, they would get disrupted. I think so. This is extremely important for businesses to be very agile, adaptive, and what have you, as people have spoken before. So I think balancing the human aspects is putting the people in the dead center of everything that we do. Technology is, of course, has to be leveraged. Something that I felt that I should maybe also give as a takeaway for either our HR leaders or business leaders is the 5 senses. I would like to call it. It is not the sense as SENSE, but every word that I'm going to speak about ends with the N. So it's the 5 senses I would like to emphasize as the prudence. We need to have prudence, business prudence, human prudence, and prudence in doing whatever we do. Then the diligence in the execution. There should be a lot of diligence, right? And of course, we should be performance driven and outcome driven. And in the era of AI, it is the intelligence that's going to be a differentiator. And of course, we need to have a conscience. That's what I spoke about, ethics and empathic and whatever. And that's what it is. So the 5 senses, the prudence, diligence, performance, intelligence, and conscience, once you have them, they will help you balance between technology and the human aspects of business. That will help us.
Thank you, Dr. Murthy, for sharing that.
Yeah.
I would, when we're
You are
talking
on
about
mute,
people and culture and
Rajita.
understanding these 3 R's, these 5 senses, what I would also like to try to understand, Dr. Ankita, maybe you could help us over here. Work culture is so difficult, or organization culture is so difficult to define, or pin down and say this is what it's defined as, this is what we want it to be like. But how important, or how honest, how should a company prioritize this? Because there are so many challenges right now for businesses to even stand still right now, to function right now. So on a degree of 1 to 10, or on an understanding, how does a business make this a priority for themselves? How do they use this as an optimization for themselves?
So, Aprajita, if I understood your question well, it's about culture, right? How do we?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think culture has always been the biggest enabler. So obviously, when things were normal, we focused so much on culture and A lot of times we misinterpret it as, if at all you have good culture, you will be able to focus on collaboration, and you will be able to communicate well, you will be able to take care of your people well, because culture of the organization is such. Wherein the fact is, if at all these 4 to 5 things are done properly, if at all you are able to collaborate well with your people, if at all you communicate well as and when required, if you are transparent, if you share probably the biggest and the smallest picture about the organization, if you take care of your people, like Murthy, Rohit, everybody mentioned, if at all you are empathetic, probably all this when comes together, that becomes the culture, right? So we have always created humongous and very complex definition around culture, wherein I think the culture of the organization is how people exist, behave, and work together. And it has always been important, but looking at the current scenario, when things are more uncertain, when things are actually directionless, people are still scared. People don't know what will happen to the future. When we talk about boundaryless organizations, when we talk about layoffs, they are equally clueless. I think that's where culture plays the most important role. And the scale that you have given, scale of 1 to 10, I would still rate it above 8, probably 8, 9, or 10. It will always remain in first three of the priority list, because as per my understanding, if culture of the organization is balanced, if the culture of the organization is maintained well, even when you are going through a difficult time, that solves all your issues, that serves as a true enabler, and it gives you that push which is required to stay together, fight the current situation, and using all the resources that you have around you in the most perfect manner to get the desired outcome. So Aprajita, to conclude, I would say culture was always important. It will always remain important, because it's not a single component, but it's about all the P's and the C's that we have been talking about, and getting everything together, and that really matters.
Thank you for sharing that. Over here, I would also like to understand, Dakshmi, do you think technology can improve the effectiveness of the wellness programs which are now being put into in organizations through these policies?
So I think it makes a lot of sense in terms of the organizations being focusing on wellness, because yes, employee security, employees wellness has become the topmost thing, right? Linking it to the culture, like culture of an organization is about the north. It's just like your north star, right? That's the brightest star that exists, and almost everything in the organization that comes across, you have to actually try and link it to the same, right? Be it your communications, be it your actions, be it the way you are actually sharing ahead your own thoughts and stuff. I mean, across with the employees, the transparency, all that actually brings up there, right? So on the wellness side of it, I rather pick it up on three sides. One, there have to be the companies have to actually take ahead and say start using say things like virtual reality, right? People can turn this into an as an engagement session as well. People can have these virtual reality machines wherein there are specific aspects, they are being given automatic reminders, right, in terms of after every half an hour, after every 1 hour kind of a thing, wherein people can just go ahead, take certain breaks out of their own schedules. You have your smart watches coming up, right? Almost everybody nowadays uses a Fitbit or perhaps an Apple Watch, right? These actually help you across in terms of managing your stress, managing the way you have been focusing on your health side. The second aspect here is I think the company should work on there should be wellness incentives. People who are doing things outside their curriculums, or they can even link it as a part of their OKRs as well, right? You can have certain outcomes driven within the organizations today to say that you need to focus, you need to do certain outcomes, managing your health, managing your wellness, and if you do that, that's something again that hits on your performance as well. Right, and then obviously that can also act as an add-on to wellness perks that the organizations today can offer. So these are three aspects. Another thing on the wellness side of it is I think to manage, and I think Dr. Murthy and even Rohit touched upon that in the first aspect that we were talking about, is to measure the employee happiness and engagement. right? That's an important parameter, since we are all away from each other. There is no social capital that I can earn upon, something that I just earned while I was working in person. All that is rather something that I've just leveraged upon. It is not something that will sustain for a lifelong thing. I need to actually work upon those things. So it's important for business leaders to actually use certain collaborative platforms wherein you can nudge the employees to check out how's their mood, how's their happiness index, and then perhaps they can tell the business leader and on what could be the corrective actions that they can take moving ahead.
Thank you, Dakshi, for sharing that. So I think with all of this, with all of these great insights, what I also would like to understand, I think a lot of participants also would like to understand that do you think in the coming future, Dr. Ankita, do you think that the job market in the near future would be much more diverse? Are there any specific in-demand skills that job givers and job drivers will also be looking for when they're hiring? And is there any kind of special pointers to be kept in mind for the same?
So, Prajita, yes, I think, like Murthy mentioned, we spoke about boundaryless organizations. So, you talk about boundaryless organizations, you talk about boundaryless jobs. Everything is going to be, without a boundary. Probably there will be too many opportunities to explore. And when we talk about skill sets, I think we are already there. And like Rohit mentioned initially, the numbers also prove that people have started, I think that's Dakshdeep also covered, but people have started investing a lot of time in training. They do realize, you know, how the future of work will look like, and they have started progressing towards it. So obviously things are going to change drastically, and it's quite evident even now. One thing which I would definitely focus on, and I think we have been talking about all these things a lot, that something, we are all scared, or probably I'm sure 60% of us are scared when we talk about AI or automation taking away our jobs. And people have been repeatedly telling, all the leaders have been, telling this over and over, that you have to focus on something which is only humanly possible. So those human skills, I think people have to focus more on that. When Dakshdeep, right, like he was talking about wellness, Murthy, he spoke about employee welfare and how important communication is, how you are taking care of people is what Rohit spoke on. When we put all these things together, initially we all put it used to put it in HR's pocket, right? That's the team who is supposed to do it, which has changed now. I think each individual, each manager, everybody existing in the organization is equally responsible. And when we talk about future, when we talk about collaborative work frame, when we talk about communication as a very important component, when we talk about care, when we talk about consistency, I think without having human skills, nobody will be able to excel or reach the next level. So, subject matter expertise, I'm sure we are very careful about. We all have that level of degree where whatever is required, but that's one part which is missing, or probably which is still to be explored. That's the human skill, and that will have more importance than ever in coming future. And that's the place where people, especially HR, and not only HR, but everybody has to focus.
Thank you, Dr. Ankita, for sharing that. So I think when we're talking about the role of understanding how human skills become more relevant over here, what I would also love to understand at this point is that Dakshdeep, are there any top tech trends that you're paying attention to that might change HR as we know it, or HR functions? Uh, like Dr. Ankita just mentioned. So are there any top trends which are coming in, which tools which are being used, which are kind of, performing some of those functions, or which might be aiding to it, the entire process? Any specific tools or trends?
Something on, I mean, the top tech trends that I would that we can focus upon is, one is the use of AI across the entire life cycle, right? Be it starting from hiring of an employee to an exit of an employee, each and every aspect, right? Even You can call yourself even in the aspect of your HR desk digitization, right? Or setting up virtual calls or reminding the people about tasks, gamifying everything, checking the mood of the employee, reminders for meetings, right? All these things are rather being managed by the AI engines right now, right? So Genie, for example, from PeopleStrong, that's one of the platform that we use, and we even offer to a lot of our customers. That's one of an intelligent AI chatbot or a collaborative platform as well that helps the organization automate a lot of their mundane tasks, right? So that's one. Secondly is, since you were touching upon that wellness topic, and a lot about collaboration as well. There is a very high usage about work management apps. If you look at internationally, there are approximately 3.8 on an average 3.8 apps that are being used to drive collaboration and communications. Right, the number is a less is perhaps say fractionally less in India, but then organizations are looking out for tools which can actually increase the collaboration, because you don't have the in-person presence, and video conferencing is not something that we call it as collaboration, right? That goes much beyond it. You need to have things wherein you can communicate about specific tasks. You have to have contextual conversations. You need to have that connect in between, wherein that can drive focus across within the aspects that you are doing, right? So that's the second thing. And the third is, since it's a lot about productivity going ahead, so the focus and the trending should be more on the agile and flexible performance management, wherein I believe, and again, the OKR based framework is an apt in today's scenario, wherein the organizations can create quantifiable goals on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis, and then they can actually start tracking that out on how people are actually evaluating. So these three things, one is agile and flexible performance management, second is the work management applications, and the third is use of AI across the platform. These three things, I believe, would be the top tech trends that will actually impact the work.
Thank you, Dakshi, for sharing those three trends with us. Dr. Murthy, could you also please help us understand what are the skills and functions that you think that we might need moving forward?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rajita. I was just scribbling some notes. I think as far as the new normal is in focus, I think there are quite a few attributes or skills that will become very important in no particular order. One, all employees or all future workforce will have to make lifelong learning a key part of their career. Lifelong learning. So whatever we learn, the shelf life of the skills is going to be so limited. So we have to constantly be updating ourselves. Like what Dakshdeep has said, I agree with him. It is AI, ML, IoT, or augmented reality. The various technology levers that are there today, it is a wave. So there are waves of technology that would come that we need to be upgrading ourselves. So that is one, lifelong learning. Two, accept technology as a key enabler for ourselves. You cannot be aloof from technology and work on an island. So technology is the one that gets you the agility that we spoke about, or we need to be working in asynchronous environments. Various teams will be working and they will be working at their own convenience. So they are not synchronous. When we go to an office, we are all in a synchronous climate. We go at 9 o'clock in the morning, we stay there till 6 in the evening, and we come back. So this is the habituated workforce that we all have been used to. But now, when people are working from home, they work on different time schedules on different projects at their own convenience. So to be able to adapt and to be able to work as a team in this asynchronous environment is going to be extremely important. And for that, technology has to be an enabler. So that's what we need to build the ability to work in such environments, making technology a key player. Most important of all the things, I think, as we all spoke so far about wellness. Wellness, in my mind, is on three dimensions: physical, mental, and emotional. Let us say, or social. Four aspects. Why not? Why three? Four: physical, mental, emotional, and social. I think the physical wellness is all that people mostly talk about. Hey, you're looking fit, you're looking dull, you have a fever, you have. Then the mental wellness is not perceived easily. It is not tangible. So it needs to be thought through. And the whole world is dealing with somebody who has committed a suicide, and the news media is crazy about it, and all of that. Nobody would have an indication of what a person is going through. And particularly working from remote locations, it tantamounts to working like always on. It's like constant crisis, panic, running from one email to the other and delivering one to the other. So It's a different kind of a skill that you need, because where else would you run to? Because if there's something is not so good at work, you would run home, or something is not good at home, you try to take your mind off and put into fitness or do something or the other. But to balance all of it from the same location now, it's all crammed in. It's all a mashup. So that's a different skill that we need to pick up. So the new normal is more challenging than one would imagine. So I think one needs to peel the onion carefully and understand how they do this. And very quickly, since I have the time, 30 seconds, I'll plug it in. Somebody asked a question about product management, right, and the role that it could play. I think innovation in India, for India, and leveraging Atmanirbhar is a great initiative that we as a country have in terms of cutting down the import-export deficit. That's all opportunity in India. Is there a roadmap for that? Yes, if one double clicks on everything that's being done and everything previously has been imported, and what can we do to really develop indigenously? So that would be a great opportunity. And there will be a wealth of opportunity out there. And innovating in India for India. So far, India has been good at executing on roadmaps given to us by multinational companies whose organizations have been existing in India. But it is time for India to rise up and say, what does not just create products for export, but create products for consumption in India. When we start looking at India consumption and India demand and adapt to it, oh my goodness, there will be a wealth of opportunity out there, right? So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Murthy, for sharing that. I think one important question we would also like to understand over here is, Rohit, could you please help us understand what are the important considerations which we might have to keep in mind for revising performance management practices, policies? And do you think that's also going to be something which organizations should start thinking about?
No, absolutely. I think Dakshdeep referred to OKRs some time back, and that's one thing we are kind of implementing at Paytm as well. I think there's a huge shift in the way appraisal processes are being done. It is even going to be even more targeted on outcomes, with a huge focus on measuring productivity. Agility and responsiveness and anchoring on values are also going to get even more critical as performance traits. The communication feedback, because again, the lack of in-person interactions through most of this year and going forward as well, the communication of feedback between managers and employees has become more important than ever. I think somebody just mentioned also about there's been no linkage to what time somebody starts work, what time somebody finishes work, what's a weekend, what's a weekday, and I think it's been intense, and I've seen productivity. In most organizations, also definitely ours as well, really go up. Actually, if anybody had any fear about how it's going to work, I think those fears in most cases have been completely allayed, because the intensity of work has actually gone up. But in that sense, when you're so work driven, having time to speak about how a person is doing, about careers, about feedback, and documenting that feedback so it's clear, transparent, again is going to be extremely important. Some of the critical ingredients in the appraisal process must include, I think, holistic communication of performance, multi-stakeholder feedback, transparency of outcomes, and clear differentiation in performance spectrums via the performance management system. So there's some things that I think should come into play as we look at performance systems as we go forward. I also take an opportunity to answer a question that I think Vikas Dua had asked over there. What he said was a huge impact on jobs in the white collar space, which seems unprecedented. There's a clear need to revive growth and create opportunities. Are there any ways in which government or industry or both together, can work towards speeding up this process? So just my thoughts as I was reflecting on this question, Vikas. I think a lot has been done by the government, at least, especially in the initial phase, when the fear was so high, and I love the way the entire country came together on making this high priority. Because this would have been so new to them as well. I think I really feel the consumer sentiment, has to go up, and life needs to go on, and people need to feel safe. So I think giving them the confidence that they will stay as safe as possible, especially as offices, markets, metros, business, flights, trains, restaurants open up, by ensuring that the must-dos, in the environment when they open up, there's got to be a joint responsibility of the government and industry by shaping and then following and enforcing safety norms, and not letting the enforcement get lax. And then people should also feel safe that should something happen, they will be taken care of, by having the app medical facility. Because I think this is going to be an important one to be the catalyst to get the economy going. Otherwise, if people don't spend, people stay at home, there's nothing happening, then companies won't be able to sustain it. So this, I think, is one fundamental element that we can learn from what other countries have done. We can learn from what we are doing ourselves, what states are doing. Some states are doing better than the others, and take it forward. I also think supporting existing industries with relevant tax SOPs and enable ease of doing business, so that they can sustain their operations, is the second thing that can help in job creation. And finally, I think, like I said, there's also an opportunity in the pandemic, right? So thinking through the new industry, like ITS was a very nascent industry 20, 25 years back, and how India has really ridden the wave there. Think through what are the new industries that could boom up in an environment like this and create jobs there. Industry and government partnerships on accelerating those jobs, could also come in very, very useful.
Thank you, Rohit, for sharing that. We'll now quickly, we're running a little short on time, so we'll quickly open the floor for question and answers. So I think we already have a couple of them. So I think one is from Mr. K.K. Pradeep. It's addressed to Dr. Ankita. Dr. Ankita, as you rightly mentioned, the IT sector has embraced this change well. The question is, how is it in the Indian IT sector today, the embracing of project management is the way to go ahead?
So, Aprajita, I think this question partially was already answered by Murthy while he was answering your previous question. But just to add on, I would say there are a few basic changes, or there are a few basic requirements that we need to focus on. And if at all we make that shift, early, probably that will help in product or project management. So we have been, for a very long time, we have been focusing on processes and tools. And I think this is the time where we have realized that we should focus more on individuals and interaction. We have been doing contract negotiation, and it's the time when we shift from contract negotiation to customer collaboration, from following just a plan to responding to a change, like most of them have already mentioned. So as for me, these are three very basic things. If at all we make that shift, probably the management will become much more fluid and probable.
Thank you,
Rajita. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. So we have another question. How will social distancing restrictions impact the office culture and office cohesiveness? So, Dr. Murthy, Rohit, if you could, just help us understand your 2 cents on it. Do you think it's going to play a role? And if it does, what could be possible ways to deal with it?
I clubbed that question also with, I saw a question from Ankita as well, which is also similar. Ankita Sharma, despite all good press about working from home, the experience hasn't been plain sailing. So in the social distancing element, how do you create a culture? I think one point I can share, and Dr. Murthy, please add after that, is around, I would say, psychological safety. I think somewhere, as I'm sure organizations and HR departments and leaders have already, done so many things to reach out, to connect. The way Zoom has become an $85 billion company, over 6 months is again, a testimony about how much virtual elements are happening. And in our company, we have Freaky Fridays, we have we have birthday celebrations, we have family events. So I think a lot of companies are doing various things to kind of get the virtual connect going. But I think, in my mind, at the crux of it, as long as there's psychological safety, an employee can understand that the company is there. There are support systems that have been created for an employee to reach out. Should something, should the person have any questions around anything, job security, what's going on in the house with the entire ecosystem working from the house all together, across 2 or 3 bedrooms. I think that element of safety, of mental wellness, elements that Murthy covered some time back. As long as that happens, and there's authenticity and trust in the relationship and partnership and the communication, I think those are elements that I think fundamental elements, as fundamental as they always are, but more intensified, more in the know, more in the open, are things that I think will help create this. Otherwise, there's going to be a challenge. There's a statement I heard was it's good. It's always good to be fair. It's also good to be perceived to be fair. So I think the perceptions of how companies, how employees and companies feel about each other during these times will enable a strong culture. Murthy, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Rohit. You covered most of them. I was checking the boxes here on my notepad. I think over and above all the valid points that Rohit has so very well articulated, I think self-discipline and the first level managers. Let me try to blend in the other question on the for the panel that somebody has posted in terms of what should be the first level managers have. I think converting the management into a supporting role as opposed to a supervisory role, that becomes extremely important in a remote working environment. And instead of taking the approach of tops down to take the KPIs and to get the work done, while that will happen anyways, you need to take a very active role in terms of being bottoms up, in terms of taking the voice of the employees and their concerns and getting them resolved by working with the management. So there is a little bit of a reversal and more emphasis that would be laid on some of those. And with a tongue in cheek, if I just make a comment, when everything was going well, that is pre COVID 19, we used to sit in the same office, and for guys or gals sitting around us in the next cabin, next cubicle, people would send a happy birthday greeting from here and would become so emotional, not so very connected. But now we feel, hey, we are not getting into these get togethers or Friday get togethers or what have you. So it is like a pendulum swing. So, what is it that I suggest we do is to leverage the voice communication beyond the text communication and to put some tonality and an emotion into a conversation and a video beyond that. And of course, when the new normal hits back, then there is more of social aspect that would come in. But in the world of social distancing, there is a lot more that can be done than what people can think of. And people should adapt to these things and be more innovative and be more willing to flex themselves to do this. That's in response to Sultan's question, I think. That's what he asked. And yeah. Employee advocacy is what I would leave the managers with. They not only the business advocacy, but take a role of an employee advocate. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Murthy, for sharing that. We have one more question. Daksh, could you please help us understand, would there be a requirement for also reevaluating employee wellness policies in terms of mental health policies? And do you think technology or apps, tools could also be used for something like that?
I think for sure, yes. Answering that question, I think as I was just touching base when we touched upon the wellness question earlier on as well. One for sure, yes, organizations should start linking wellness as a critical element in every employee's or the organization's culture aspect itself, right? So when I talk about that, it's not just about you focusing on the employee's outcome in terms of his work, in terms of whatever are his deliverable, but then his holistical aspect. Sorry, in terms of the holistical aspect on how the employee health is all about. So health is not always about how he looks or how he perceives himself, but it's a lot about the mental health, right? Amount of pressure that the employees are actually going through nowadays. Think about people who are extroverts, right? People like me actually who have been always on the travel are now actually stuck up in their houses, right? It has been 6 months that I have been out of my place. You actually tend to go only to around your places wherever you would want to do. But then yes, that's actually creates a lot of pressure. These things actually starts impacting your performance sometime or the other, right? So it makes a lot of sense that the organization, the culture of the organization actually describes the way they touch base or the way they care for the employees, the way they focus on the health of the employees, the mental health of the employees, how they ensure that people are still engaged, people are still working upon. So I think from a tools perspective, I believe, I don't know, I mean, rather a lot of organizations have done a lot of initiatives in terms about giving certain allowances for work from home. People have either given furnitures, right? I believe something that can help across is why don't you share a Fitbit across to all the employees, right? That actually helps across, and then again you link that across in terms of your outcomes. You evaluate your employees as one of your KRs to say that have you done certain aspects, or perhaps have you done a jog or have you done a walk across 1 hour for a day. So it's not about always being sitting on the laptop just working across. I know it's the time wherein it's about 24/7 availability. People can't have excuses in terms of saying that I'm on the road, I'm driving, I can't talk. People just go ahead and take people for granted, right? That the person would still be available at whatever time you give him a call, right? So that's I think one important aspect. People should start using a lot of these digital tools, start making them as a mandate in terms of the overall employees, and start linking them to their performance. So that could be a greater shift in the overall culture. And as rightly said by one of I was just reading one of the researches done by Gartner. So it's a company with a strong culture, have approximately 40 odd percent of a higher retention and 74% more engaged employees. So you don't have much better data analysis about from this. And what today employees expect from an employer is to understand what they are facing, and rather just not focusing about just the work side of it.
Thank you, Dakshi, for sharing that. With that, unfortunately, our allotted time for today is a little running over the time. So I would love to thank the panelists. Thank you so much for the amazing insights and your experiences that you've shared. They're invaluable. Neha, over to you to help us with some of the key takeaways today, please.
Thank you so much, Aprajita, and thank you so much, panelists. It was indeed a very, very insightful discussion that we had. And at the end, the key takeaways that, I would like to add upon, as I was just listening to Dr. Murthy, and, as you rightly said, that we have been exporting the IT infrastructure from India, and it's now time to implement this in the organizations in India. Until last year also we were talking about people analytics, AI, and chatbots to implement in the organizations. But now, because of the pandemic, I think everybody has taken a step back, and businesses are taking out, I would say funds as well to invest in that part of the business. And as Rohit, you pointed out, the communication part is also very, very important in the organization. Everything is interlinked in terms of whether it's culture in the organization, whether it's employee wellness. And yeah, as you correctly said, the business of Zoom has taken new heights. Everything is interconnected to communication, how we communicate to the employee. The complete experience that we give as an organization to employees is based on how we communicate. And one of the key enablers is technology. So now, in terms of future working, or remote working, we'll have to depend on technology. We'll have to adapt the agile methods and upgrade our IT infrastructure, and work upon upgrading people-centric policies as well in organizations. So yes, thank you so much, Dr. Ankita, and thank you, Dakshdeep as well, for touching upon employee wellness. That is also one of the most important part that has to be taken care of. Initially, we were all in offices. We could, meet face to face, talk to employees face to face. I think now it's become more of a challenge to understand what's going in the background, for managers to keep in touch on a regular basis, because everybody's online working on their systems throughout the day. So yes, probably figuring out a process how this could be done. And yeah, so that's about it. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much, Aprajita as well. And thank you, Human Capital team, for organizing this. Thank you. Hope to see you soon.
Thank
So
you.
much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Thank you.